A billionaire stood in the snow, eyes fixed on the headstone of the son he lost 5 years ago. The world knew William Carter as a ruthless tech mogul, a man who built empires. But here in Maplewood Memorial Park, he was just a grieving father, alone with his silence, his guilt, in the grave of a boy taken too soon. Then he heard it, a soft sniffle. He turned and saw her. A little girl no older than 10, barefoot and shivering behind the headstone. Her clothes were torn. Her eyes were hollow. She looked like she didn't belong in his world. But what she said next changed everything. "I knew your son. He told me, if anything ever happened to him, I should find you." William froze. His breath caught. How did this child know Ethan? What was she doing here? And why did she look like she'd been running from something or someone? What started as a moment of grief would soon unravel a hidden truth, a dangerous secret, and a legacy left behind by a boy who never got to grow up. Stay with this story, because by the time it ends, your heart won't be the same. The wind tore across Maplewood Memorial Park like it had a purpose. Cold, sharp, unrelenting. Snow clung to the bare trees and settled softly on the headstones, muffling sound, hiding footprints. It was the kind of day that whispered grief into your bones. William Carter stood motionless at his son's grave, his jaw clenched, his breath visible in the bitter air. A bouquet of white lilies trembled in his gloved hands. 5 years, 5 winters since he'd buried Ethan. Since a drunk driver had erased the only person who'd ever mattered to him, the world had called William a titan of tech, a billionaire genius. But in truth, he hadn't built anything that lasted. Not really. Not since that night. He whispered, "I'm sorry," just as a faint sniffle drifted through the hush. His head snapped toward the sound. Behind Ethan's headstone, huddled near a half-dead bush, was a child, barefoot, her dress torn, her skin ghost-pale against the wind. She shrank back as his shadow stretched toward her. "What are you doing here?" William asked, voice steady but firm. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes wide. "I didn't mean to be here when you came. Please don't make me leave." She looked no older than 10, trembling like a leaf about to break free. Her cheeks were raw with cold, and her slippers, if they could even be called that, were soaked through. William knelt, his coat rustling in the snow. "You're not in trouble," he said gently. "But it's dangerous to be out here alone. What's your name?" "Lily," she said. "Lily Thompson." "Lily," he repeated. "Why are you here?" She hesitated, hugged herself tighter. "I come here sometimes to talk to Ethan." The breath caught in his throat. "You knew my son?" She nodded, eyes glassy with held-back tears. "He was my friend." William felt like the ground shifted under him. Ethan had never mentioned her. But after his death, William had learned things. Journal entries, quiet kindnesses Ethan never boasted about. Maybe this was another one. "How did you meet him?" "The park," she said. "Near the school. He brought me sandwiches sometimes. Juice boxes. He talked to me. He said I mattered." Something cracked in William's chest. His own son, just a boy, had done what William, in all his fortune and fame, had failed to do. Truly see someone. "Where are your parents?" he asked, voice tight. "My mom got sick, real sick. She didn't wake up. My dad left after that. Said he couldn't do it anymore." William clenched his jaw. "You've been alone since then?" She nodded. "I sleep in the old church bus behind Hope Hill Chapel. It's not so bad. I curl up under the seats when it rains." A storm of rage rose in William's throat. Rage at the world, at fate, at how easy it was for a child to slip through the cracks. "And why did you come here today?" Lily looked up at him, eyes shining. "Because before he died, Ethan told me that if I ever needed help, and I was too scared to keep going, I should find his dad." William's heart nearly stopped. Tears stung his eyes. "He said you'd help me," she whispered. He reached for her hands. They were like ice, fragile. But in that moment, William felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice rough. "No more buses, no more cold nights. You're not alone anymore." Lily blinked, stunned. "But what? Why?" Because you mattered to Ethan, William said, his voice breaking. And that means you matter to me. Without another word, she stumbled into his arms, and for the first time in 5 long years, William felt the weight of something not lost, but found. That night, Lily sat wrapped in blankets on the sofa of William Carter's sprawling estate, her eyes wide as she looked around the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers. She flinched when he approached with a tray of cocoa. "You're safe here," he said softly. She nodded. "I've never had hot chocolate before." He sat beside her, stunned into silence. Upstairs in Ethan's untouched bedroom, the door creaked open. William hadn't stepped inside in years. But now, maybe it was time. Maybe Lily hadn't just come for help. Maybe she'd been sent to remind him that Ethan's story wasn't finished. And maybe, just maybe, someone didn't want it to be told. Who was this girl, really? Why had Ethan never told his father about her? And what was he afraid of when he told her to find William? 3 questions for you. If you were William, would you have trusted a homeless child's story at a gravesite? Why do you think Ethan made Lily promise to find his father? Was he scared of something? Do you believe Lily stumbled upon William by chance? Or was this fate leading her there? The next morning, golden sunlight bled through the sheer curtains of William Carter's estate, casting soft rays across the polished floors. It was the first morning in years that didn't feel hollow. In the kitchen, William fumbled with the stove, burning the toast, overcooking the eggs. It didn't matter. He hadn't cooked for anyone since Ethan died. Now there was someone to care for again. Upstairs, Lily opened her eyes slowly. Wrapped in warm sheets, surrounded by silence that didn't threaten but comforted, she lay still for a moment, not trusting it. Safety had never lasted long, but this felt different. When she wandered down barefoot, William greeted her with an awkward smile. "I tried pancakes," he said, sliding a plate her way. "No guarantees." She sat, took a bite, and looked up at him with wide eyes. "They're perfect." William's throat tightened. It wasn't the food. It was the way she looked at him, like she couldn't believe someone had tried. After breakfast, Lily explored the house with quiet reverence, her fingers trailing along picture frames and bookshelves. Eventually, she stopped at a half-open door. Ethan's room. "You can go in if you want," William said from behind her. "I haven't touched anything." She nodded slowly and stepped inside. The room was a preserved memory. Superhero posters, a telescope by the window, soccer cleats by the closet. She paused at the bookshelf, running her fingers over the spines. "He liked fantasy," William said. "Stories about heroes." Lily turned toward the desk, where a framed photo caught her eye. Ethan was smiling, arm thrown around another boy, both laughing like the world was still whole. "Who's that with him?" she asked. William stepped closer, squinting. "Jake Monroe, Ethan's best friend. They were inseparable." Lily's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. "Jake," she whispered. "He's the one who—" She trailed off. "What?" William leaned in. "What about Jake?" Lily hesitated, gripping the photo tightly. "The day before it happened, I saw them at the park. Ethan looked upset. Jake was yelling. Something about secrets. And Ethan said, he said he'd do the right thing, no matter what." William froze. That was not in any report. Officially, Ethan had been walking home from practice when he was hit by a drunk driver. No foul play, no suspicion. But this planted doubt in soil that had been frozen for years. "What kind of secrets?" he asked carefully. "I don't know," Lily said. "Jake was angry. Then he left. Ethan gave me a sandwich and told me to be brave." William sat on Ethan's bed, mind racing. Why hadn't anyone mentioned this argument? Why had Jake never come forward? Lily stepped forward and pulled something from the coat William had given her the night before. A crumpled piece of paper. "I found this," she said softly, "in the pocket." William took it with trembling hands. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Ethan's. A half-finished note. "If something happens to me, promise me you'll look after Lily. She's been through more than anyone knows. Please, Dad. Don't let her disappear too." William couldn't breathe. Ethan had known. Somehow, he'd sensed the danger. And in the middle of it all, he'd thought of Lily. Trusted his father to do what he couldn't. He looked up at the girl in front of him. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said. She smiled through tears. You sound like him when you say that. Later that day, William made a series of quiet phone calls to an old private investigator, to a journalist who still owed him a favor. He wanted the truth. And this time, he wasn't accepting the neat, polished version they'd given him 5 years ago. As the sun dipped low, Lily curled up in the den with a blanket and a mug of cocoa. William sat nearby, scrolling through photos of Ethan he hadn't dared to open in years. Do you think Ethan would be mad at me? She asked suddenly. Why would he be? For coming here, for telling you stuff. William shook his head. No, he'd be proud of you. He asked you to be brave, and you were. She wiped a tear. I just miss him. So do I, William said quietly. Every day. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with connection. With the quiet knowledge that grief didn't always destroy, it sometimes made room for something new to grow. But deep inside William's mind, a storm was brewing. Why had Ethan been afraid? What did he uncover? And was it possible his death wasn't just an accident? What do you think Ethan meant when he wrote that note about Lily? Was Jake hiding more than just an argument? And what kind of secret would make a boy fear for his life? 3 days had passed since Lily arrived at the Carter estate, and something unspoken had begun to change inside its walls. The house, once silent and cold like a mausoleum, now hummed with quiet life. Footsteps echoed down the marble floors. Laughter, even if cautious, lingered in the air. And for the first time in years, William Carter had begun to sleep through the night. But peace wasn't why he'd reopened Ethan's room. It was the note, the trembling handwriting, the unfinished sentence that still echoed in his mind. Don't let her disappear too. That morning, a manila envelope slid across his desk, the result of his private investigator's digging. Inside were photos, interviews, records, and one thing that made William's blood run cold. A witness, an elderly gardener who worked at the park, had come forward, quietly, nervously. He remembered seeing Ethan and Jake Monroe arguing the day before the accident. He hadn't thought much of it back then, but now he recalled Ethan's last words before storming off. If you're not going to tell the truth, I will. William stared at the transcript, his jaw tight. What truth? He flipped through more documents, school reports, volunteer logs. Ethan had been part of a student project at Westfield Elementary, a school that had undergone recent renovations by Monroe Development Group, Jake's father's company. One inspection form caught William's attention. Ethan had flagged a structural concern, one serious enough to warrant shutdown. The page had been initialed, but never filed. Had Ethan discovered something? And if he had, was that why he died? Before he could think further, a voice broke his focus. Mr. Carter? Lily stood at the doorway, holding something in her hand. I found this in Ethan's book. She crossed the room and handed it to him, a folded page torn from a notebook. On it, Ethan had scribbled a list, names, dates, numbers. At the bottom, a sentence. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. William's stomach dropped. Ethan had feared for his life. He looked up at Lily, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Do you remember anything else from that day in the park? He asked gently. She bit her lip. Jake said something. He was mad, really mad. Said Ethan was going to ruin everything for his dad. He yelled that Ethan didn't know what he was doing. William's mind raced. All these years he'd blamed the drunk driver, but now it seemed the accident was just the final act in a story no one had bothered to read. He picked up the phone and called an old friend, Detective Vargas. I need you to reopen a case, he said quietly. My son's death. Something's wrong. That night, as snow returned to the sky, William sat with Lily by the fireplace. She sipped hot cocoa, her feet tucked beneath her. The flickering flames cast shadows across her face. Do you think Ethan knew? She asked suddenly. Knew what? That he was going to die? William didn't answer right away. I think he knew someone didn't want him speaking up, and he did it anyway. Why would someone hurt him just for telling the truth? He looked into her eyes. Because truth scares people who live off lies. A heavy silence followed. The next morning, the case was officially reopened. Detective Vargas took the lead, pulling old reports, contacting witnesses, reviewing footage, and within 48 hours, something cracked. Jake Monroe was brought in for questioning. It didn't take long. Under pressure, he admitted what had really happened. He and Ethan had argued again that night, this time near the street. Ethan had said he was going to report the safety violations himself. Jake, panicking, shoved him. Ethan stumbled. Into the road. The car hit him. Jake swore he didn't mean to hurt him. He just wanted to stop him from talking. But that push had changed everything. When William heard the confession, he didn't feel vindicated. He felt grief all over again. Deeper, sharper. His son had died trying to protect others. Trying to do the right thing. Alone. And now, he wasn't going to let Ethan be forgotten. That evening, William returned to Maplewood Memorial Park. This time Lily stood beside him. She held a white rose and a folded letter. Together they knelt before Ethan's grave. "I found her," William whispered. "She's safe now, just like you asked." Lily placed the note on the grave. Her voice trembled. "Hi, Ethan. I miss you. Thank you for being kind to me when no one else was. I have a home now, and someone who keeps his promises." William pulled her close, overcome by a flood of emotions he'd held back for years. In the weeks that followed, William officially adopted Lily. It was more than legal, it was healing. She brought life back into the halls of the Carter home, and he gave her something she hadn't known she needed: stability, protection, love. On what would have been Ethan's 18th birthday, they hosted a small gathering in their garden. Friends, family, former teachers, people whose lives Ethan had touched. Standing before a plaque in Ethan's memory, William spoke to the crowd. "There are two kinds of legacies," he said, "one built from wealth and one built from truth and kindness. My son chose the second, and because of that, he saved a life." Lily, now smiling in a white sundress, stepped forward and released a white dove into the sky. Everyone watched as it soared into the sunlight, and somewhere in the quiet of William's soul, he heard a voice. "You did good, Dad. What would you have done if your child left behind a secret like Ethan's? Do you think Jake deserves forgiveness or justice? And what does true legacy mean to you? Money or the people we save?" If this story touched you, type 3. Type 1 if it didn't land for you, or 2 if it was just okay. Tell us where you're watching from, and if this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of truth.